We are April and Scott, creators of naughtygym.com, and this is The Naughty Gym Show.
For years, we've been fitness and nutrition coaches to thousands of people through our commercial gyms and online platform. We've also spent nearly a decade in an ever-evolving open relationship.
This show brings together two of our biggest passions, fitness and sex positivity. Our mission is to maximize the physical and mental health of anyone brave enough to explore relationship structures that run counter to societal norms.
We have demolished our old ways of thinking about relationships, and from that rubble, built a life full of happiness, adventure, and vitality. And now we want to help you do the same.
So hop on the treadmill, start the show, and let us teach you how to never stop playing.
Welcome to this special edition of the Naughty Gym Show, where we bring you the live keynote speeches from Be Better at Being Bad 2026 at Hedonism Resort from two of America's best sex educators, Luna Matatas and Ashley Manta.
Welcome, everyone. How are you feeling? Give me an entry check. Yeah. Oh. Okay, great. Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here to join kinky stuff, right? So we've got the kinky keynote on power, risk, and taboo and why it's so hot for our brains. And then we're going to move into the kinky tapas class. All right, so Kinky Tapas class is more hands-on. If you want to play with rope and impact play, we're going to be doing demos where you can participate. Everything's optional, so you can also stay just to observe and see what it looks like to be around kinky energy and kinky things. I'm Luna Matatas. I'm a sex and pleasure educator. I have the best job ever. I get to go around teaching people how to feel more confident, more creative, more communicative in all of their sexy things. Sex is a skill just like anything else. So if you think, oh, I'm not good at dirty talk, I'm not good at this, I'm not confident enough to do this, that's okay. You're not supposed to be. I mean, how many of you learned about kink in your high school sex ed? Yeah, I went to Catholic schools. It was kind of kinky, but I just learned how to get pregnant. That was it. So there's like a missing set of skills for us that help us bring our desires to life, right? To light up that fire from fantasy to in real life. So I teach over 30 different classes, everything from how to have a threesome to dirty talk to spanking to be a fab femdom. So reminder for yourself, if you hear anything I'm talking about that you're like, what the fuck is that? Or, oh, I want to do that. You are just as capable as anybody else. All right. It's in you already. You're already here, right? Pervert crowd comes here. So when we're thinking about how do we move into these skills, we move into them from a place of curiosity. Okay. So if your partner's like, hey, I'm curious about this, or I saw this cool thing, or I watched porn and I saw them do this and it kind of turned me on, or I buzz one out to this, or I jerk off to this, these are all places where our erotic imagination gets tickled. Okay, so we can tickle each other, but we can also tickle our brains. So we want to think about this topic of power, risk, and taboo. Why is this hot? Why are we aroused by this? Why does this give us such a rush, such a pleasure perspective? When we start thinking about kink in general, I mean, kink for one person is different for another person, is very different for Shannon and Rick. And then we've got, another spectrum of things that we're looking at. But usually when we talk about kink, we're talking about things that are outside of what we might consider normal sex. Normal sex is different depending on who you ask what their sex is about, right? So anal for some people is normal. Anal for other people is kinky. But usually we're referring to things that are a little bit creative, that involve the erotic imagination as well as sensation, possibly role play, and also a deepening of connection. Whether that's for one night, 10 minutes, or for 10,000 nights, you can have that experience of embodying your eroticism. Eroticism and sex are different. You could have lots of sex that isn't necessarily erotic, and that's not a bad thing, but you can also get eroticism without having sex. How many of you like to eat a really good meal? Like you're a foodie. You're like, yes. Okay, yes. I make Ross send me pictures of him eating burgers and steaks because I'm like, oh, this is like food porn for me. Like watching someone deeply enjoy something. So, eroticism is that feeling of aliveness where you're lit up in mind and body. So, that can come from gentle things, it can come from harder, faster things. It can also come from things that are not necessarily sexual, but maybe are sensual, right? How many of you here are sensual people? Who am I like, yeah, okay. Who are my like very visual people? You're very, okay, all right, noted. Who are my touch sluts? Who can't get enough of touch? Yes, also noted. Okay. What about scent? Who's into scent? You like to inhale your, yes, okay. All right. What about taste? Who wants to eat everybody and eat everything? Yeah. All right. Yeah. What about sound? Who's into moans, dirty talk? Yes. Okay. Oh, we got a very sensual group. All right. Which actually tracks. So, a lot of what we talk about when we move into kink is actually expansion of sensation. So, the edge play comes from your own personal limits, and we're moving closer to the edge of that. Your limits come from your interpersonal ideas about what is sex, what is sexy. It also comes from society, right? So, one of the first topics we're going to talk about is power. When we think about power, we have power all around us, right? We're in a power dynamic right now. I'm leading, you're participating, right? You're in a power dynamic as parents. You're in a power dynamic as bosses, as employees. You're in a power dynamic in your relationships at different times, right? So often our body and our brain take things that we're familiar with that aren't necessarily erotic, and it wants to throw pleasure at it. So sometimes that's pleasure through things like subversion. So a subversion might mean you're a big boss at work. And so it's highly erotic for you to be able to surrender all of that responsibility, all of that powerful charge, so that you can experience the other side of it. Much of power play, much of kink is about contrasts. And we're going to do that hands on in the workshop afterwards. But emotional and physical contrasts bring us this heat. It brings us an opportunity to play with both sides of our spectrum. When you think about power, a lot of people have these very specific ideas about what power must look like. That dominance is about harder, faster, meaner, and it could be, but it can also be about sensual. It could be about a look. It could be about a presence. It could be about a word. So think about something, either if you're on the submissive side, you're interested in surrender, things like helplessness, things like being taken care of, things like being led, or on the dominant side where you want to do the leading, you want to take control. I got into femdoming not because I was necessarily masturbating to it as a kid. I used to masturbate to my mom's, like, you know, those dirty books that they're not really dirty, but they have like a romantic cover of like somebody's like blouse is popped open. And I was like, cool story. She just gets thrown on the bed and blouse pops open and she comes. Okay. Yeah. And then there's this social archetype of that feminine is seen as more submissive. So it was actually subversive for me to challenge that and to think about what would it be like to experience the other side? What would it feel like to be the one holding all the power, holding the pace, holding the container for somebody else? When you think about your interest in power, when you think about what might be hot for you don't have to know exactly. You might just be interested in a particular activity. You might be like, yeah, it might be fun for my partner to spank me or for me to tie my partner up. Great. You can do that. But remember that when you're playing with kink, BDSM, so the collection of activities that we call BDSM, bondage, discipline, domination, sadism, masochism, submission, those are activities you can choose to participate in. You can play with power without having to do that. You could say to your partner, I'm going to go down on you, and you're not allowed to come until I beg for it, until I ask you to. until I allow you to. That is also playing with power without having to engage any tools. Tools, kinky things, kinky activities, kinky tools, they are vessels for you. They are your energy. So if I'm tying you up with rope, it should feel like I am around you, right? That I'm wrapping around you through the rope. So thinking about how you want to feel and how you want your partner to feel is going to be way more powerful than any expensive tool, than any sort of like expansive skill. It's really about the feelings and the flavors that you bring into your power. Now, power also brings us an opportunity to play with what we call shadow sides, right? So, as a society, we've decided there are moral, ethical, and social ways of behaving. So, to be a good person, right? Who wants to be a good person? All right. Yeah. Questionable group over here. Okay, who wants to be a little naughty? Who wants to be a little naughty? Yeah, okay, all right. So this is the best part of power and taboo and risk is that we get to play, right? We get to bring back that childlike desire to play with a sexy, erotic adult reward, all right? So when we think about having those guidelines, the things that make us participate in society in ways that we are good, the opposite also exists. You know, all of you in here have the ability to be good. You also have the ability to be bad. You have the ability to be naughty. You have the ability to be rebellious. You have the ability to be bossy. Who's bossy? Who's bossy? Yeah, okay, I'm a little bossy. You have the ability to be you have the ability to be a bully. That all exists inside of us, but we suppress it so that we can participate in other behaviors that allow us to have a society, right? To organize society. When we play with things like power, when we play with risk, when we play with taboo, we suspend those and we get to pivot into those other parts that don't really get a chance to come out. So for some people, it feels very therapeutic. It feels like a release. It feels like a processing of those parts of ourselves that are quite primal, right? We see, kids are kind of wild before we teach them how to behave. And so we see that part of us still alive somewhere. It still exists in us. Let's talk about risk. So when we talk about risk, we're talking about both emotional and physical risk. So emotional risk could be things like playing with vulnerability. It could be playing with things like fear. It could be playing with other kinds of contrast of even like maximum joy, maximum pleasure, maximum selfishness, maximum sluttiness, greed, whatever it is. I want to ask you about your ideas of when we think about power, when we think about risk and how they come together. Listening to what power might look like, how many of you are interested in dominance, in doing the dominance? Okay, we have a top shortage. All right, you are all in high demand. All right, put those hands back up higher. Subs, did you see them? Okay. How many of you are interested in giving up control, giving up power? Yes. All right. Who are my greedy sluts like me that are interested in both? Your switches. Yes. Oh, okay. A lot of switches. Awesome. So remember that the two sides of you don't have to look the same. What you like to do to other people doesn't have to mean what you like done to you. You can have two completely different alter egos or sets of interests and skills. And a lot of people find this out through experimenting with things like risk. Now, what's risky for me might be different than what's risky for you. And so understanding what risk looks like at an emotional or physical level actually helps you lean in a bit more because you understand what the edge is. When we're playing with taboo or risk or power, we have to play within a container. So think about it like there's a playground, all right? And we decide what's going to be in that playground, and then we put a fence around it. So you're going to have a seesaw, you're going to have a swing, you're going to have one of those like twirly things, but I'm not going to bring in a petting zoo in the middle of it, right? So we have to understand what's being held in that container in order to protect our risk. So when we take our fantasy from up here and we bring it into in real life, there is a moment where we have to recognize that transition because you can't live in the fantasy. Okay, you got to go to work, you got to take care of people, you got to come home. You can't just be dressed up as a furry playing with like pee all day, right? I mean, I'm sure that sounds great to some of you, but we have to be able to come back. And what's wonderful about that is that risk can often take us into an altered state. So that altered state can happen through power and taboo as well. But because risk also produces things like adrenaline in our body, it might produce dopamine. So dopamine is highest before we actually get the reward. So we get to kind of edge ourselves with all of these feel good chemicals in our body that are produced through the sensations, the activities, the ideas. Even the idea of something is super sexy for people. How many of you love your erotic brain? Yes. Okay. How many of you watch porn? Okay. I just want to see if you're going to be honest with me, and some of you were not. All right. So if you've ever seen porn, you might notice that it's very sensationalized, right? It's performance. So it can be super hot for inspiration, but it doesn't really teach us how do I take the thing into real life with real bodies and real emotion. So that's often where our risk happens. We need to think about what the thing is we want to do and what might be some of the positive and the negative consequences that we want to prepare for. And often the preparation involves things like get good technique, right? Understand what might happen and what you might need to do if that happens. Do you know how to take care of someone if they get triggered? Do you know how to take care of someone if you injure them? In BDSM, we want to hurt people a little, okay? Well, we don't want to injure them, okay? You don't break your toys, all right? You treat them real good. So our erotic self often consumes what's around us, and then it produces a pleasure response. So risk, for those of you that might be into things like consensual non-consent, so playing with themes of like ravagement or force. We live in a society where that is very possible for many of us on either side. And so often, that's that social dynamic comes into our eroticism, and we're like, I don't know what to do with it. So our body's like, let's fuck it, right? We saw even during the pandemic, Pornhub releases a lot of its data around what people are turned on by. Guess what went straight through the roof? Medical play. All right. So we're often influenced by our society. We're influenced by our ideas and eroticism, which also means if you're sitting here being like, I want to be into things, but I don't know, you could just try, right? You could have a little buffet of things that you play with at a very low level and then increase what you're into. Okay, let's talk about, let's do taboo. Okay. Who's into taboo stuff? Yeah, okay. What do I mean by taboo? So that also depends on what you think is taboo. But taboo often falls around themes of perverting ideas of those social dynamics that we've agreed are good or bad. So things like authority, right? That's why we have laws against like employees and employers having relations, because there's an uneven power dynamic there that makes consent pretty impossible, right? There's a power dynamic influencing that. So again, what's a big fantasy? Boss and secretary, right? Boss. And we've got, even when we think about ideas of parental figures and then playing with age regression or playing with things like daddy or mommy, these are allowing us to take real life examples and eroticize them. Does it mean I want to have sex with my parents? No, right? This is where role playing comes in, where we're taking characteristics of the things that we want to do and we're packaging them in a way that's sexy. We're bringing our adult selves into this place where we're actually making choices. A lot of the taboo things that people associate with real life stuff are non-consensual. So there was no choice there. For many people, it might come from childhood or interpersonal experiences that weren't necessarily pleasurable, and our body responded in a way that threw pleasure at it to be able to cope or to process. For other people, they're just like, oh my God, this one time someone called me daddy, and I was like, yeah, right? So you don't have to have like an OG villain story. You can actually just try things and play with things. You might also try things and decide that you're not into it. Think about all the things right now that we know are appropriate. I mean, it's a little bit hard at Hedo because you're walking around naked. But in general, we have an idea of what's considered appropriate, what's considered not appropriate. And then we get to be a little bratty about it. We get to push those edges, which sparks these feelings of excitement. Our brains and our erotic cells love novelty. Okay. So novelty doesn't mean you have to go home and install a sex swing, although I'm sure some of you already have it. But novelty can also mean using different language. So you might play with the taboo by using language. You might play with a fantasy that you talk about that you don't ever really want to do. So if you've watched something with your partner and you want to be able to share it with them, but you're like, oh, wow, my partner of 20 years might think I'm pretty fucked up if I show them this thing. Yeah, they might. But, but remember that it's about play. So whatever we're talking about, we might have an internal struggle about. You might say, well, I'm a feminist and my partner wants to be slapped in the face and I don't want to slap her in the face because I don't want to be, someone who abuses women. So that's the chasm between our real life examples and those social and moral and ethical rules and this space where we create a container about why do you want to be hit? How long do you want to be hit? Do we know how to hit safely? What's the feeling you want to experience? How am I going to take care of you after we go into the depths of our dark sexiness and then come back out? How do we put ourselves back together afterwards when we do things like aftercare? So when we play with these ideas, we have a sense or maybe a curiosity or some kind of spark to go towards that. And then to actually take the fantasy into real life, we have to consider more than do I have rope, right? We have to consider more than is the equipment available? Are you available? What parts of yourself are you bringing into this? When I talk about the ideas of flavors or feeling, think about spanking for a moment. Okay, focus on spanking. So with spanking, you could spank someone because of punishment and reward. You could spank someone about this. You could spank someone because they have a great butt. You could spank someone because they're into pain, right? You could spank someone because they want to mark on them, because it makes them feel possessed. It makes them feel owned. You could spank someone because it's part of a role play, because you're playing teacher-student and it kind of makes sense in this. So that's what, like 5 or 6 different flavors of spanking. So when your partner says, hey, I'm kind of curious about this thing, or I'm interested in this thing, or I saw this porn, you might say, oh, tell me more. Like, what turns you on about this? What's hot about it? Very rarely do we just masturbate to, oh, yeah, spanking. Oh, spanking. We don't really do that, right? You're thinking about the position. You're thinking about who is getting spanked. You're thinking about how are they feeling? How is the person feeling who's doing the spanking? And whether the fantasy is like out there or not out there, you can really have an opportunity to tie it all together by answering those 2 questions. How do I want to feel and how do you want to feel? Because those feelings are where the eroticism comes from and it's what you channel through your activities. So one time, can I tell the porn story? Yeah, I'm gonna anyways. That was consent. So we were watching Raw's porn, and there was like this scene of these like guerrilla, like rebellion women. They captured this tourist somewhere, and they took him to the forest, and they tied him up and milked him like a cum cow. And so I was like, what's hot about this for you? Because it didn't do it for me right away. I was like, oh, it's sexy, but it wasn't my fantasy. And when he told me it was about kind of the being used, the idea of like having all these like hands and bodies and like your singular purpose is just to give cum. What a great life, right? So I was like, okay, cool, I can get into that. So I went into my bedroom, I got rope, I got scissors. I'm like, let's go to the park. So it was like 2 a.m. We go to the park, we find a tree, and 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 then I was like, okay, like I don't really know what to do here, right? I've got kind of the theme. But when you start to build that connection to the feelings, you get out of your head, right? You get into the play. You get into the embodiment, the energy of things. So we had him tied to the tree, and I was like, oh, dirty talk would be good here. So I'm like, hey, how'd you get separated from your herd, you little cum cow? So remember, it doesn't have to be serious. You can be silly and find those edges, right? You will see an appearance from Cum Cow later this week. How many people want to have fun? You want to have play? Yes, I want to see you play. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there because I want you to stay if you're interested in more hands-on skills. But I want to let you know in the Swap Card app, I'm gonna be posting a free guide for all of you. So you're gonna have access to a lot of the questions, the language, the planning, so you can talk with your partners about, okay, so we want to be a cum cow. How do we make this happen? And so I've got my 20-page BDSM guide. It's free for you all. You can redeem it till the end of the week, and it's an instant download, so you could start using it now and talk about things that I didn't go into, like consent, like building that playground, and also how to come out of that playground really safely. Then we've got Kinky Tapas coming up. If you're interested, who wants to be more confident in their bodies? You want more presence in your bodies? Amazing. Okay. So Pulse of Pleasure Party is where we're going to take you through embodying things. So we want you to feel sound instead of just hearing it. So a part of kink is actually allowing that melding, that switching of being able to process the world differently. Right? So we get to process more pleasure in that way. It's not focused on choreography. We really are going to get you to play, okay? And then we've got, you have my little stickers that Sticker Sub gave out to you. So you can access, I think I've given you a discount on the back there. You can access my webinars. There's 15 kinky skills ones if you're interested in building more skills. They're all lifetime viewing access. Okay, so I want to leave you, if you're not staying for Kinky Tapas, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to transition. I want to leave you with one question. So I want you to think about what is a fantasy that maybe you've had or you've seen someone do and you're like, why the fuck are they into that? I want you to think about something that makes you kind of curious, whether it's arousing or not for you. You know, a lot of times people hear things that they're like, why is that? That's disgusting. Why would I do that? Guess what? When arousal goes up, disgust goes down. All right? So I want you to ask yourself, you know, what am I curious about this? Even if the question is, why is this disgusting, right? Or the question is, why is my partner into this? I want you to spark that curiosity so that you can play with your edges in a way that is so rewarding, and you get to leave your erotic experiences, whether they're kinky or not, but you get to leave them with more aliveness. How does that sound? Yes. Okay. All right. What a wonderful group of perverts you are. Thank you. You're so welcome.
Who's meeting me for the first time? Couple of you, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Ashley Manta. I'm a certified sexologist. I'm a sex and relationship coach. I am the author of the CBD Solution Sex, which was published in 2020. I was the 2020 Sexpert of the Year with the XBiz Awards. I helped I was a Playboy advisor. I had a column for Dope Magazine. I wrote for Leafly. I am just a nerd about relationships. I'm non-monogamous, bisexual, neurodivergent, ADHD in the house. And I'm really excited about this particular topic because it's brand new for me. I just completed a 6-month training in internal family systems. Who's heard of IFS? A couple of people. Okay, great. To be clear, I am not a therapist. I don't play one on TV. This training was specifically internal family systems for coaches. How to take the concepts and the techniques in IFS that therapists are using, and to dial them back slightly so that we're not getting into the trauma stuff, but we're really helping people understand the parts of themselves that come up and how to work with them and be compassionate toward them. So I want you to think about your parts. What parts? Okay, yeah, these parts, but also these parts. Think of your body like it's made up of a committee, right? There's, your board of directors, if you will. There's your CEO, your chairperson of the board, and then there's lots of other people around the table that have opinions. And a lot of them are valuable opinions. Some of them are misinformed. Some of them are well-intentioned but somewhat flawed. Some of them are absolutely brilliant. And they all get a voice, but only one should get a deciding vote. And that is your self, capital S self. That's like your higher self, adult brain. Some people call it Christ consciousness, mindfulness, like whatever speaks to you. But it's a grounded presence that is characterized by different words that we'll go into, the 8 C's and the 5 P's, because Dick Schwartz, who came up with this modality, really likes alliteration. And I get it, I do too. So I found this work, and so this is new work to me in terms of my own practice, and this talk is a brand new talk. So if you've seen me talk before, you know that I am incredibly extemporaneous. I do not use notes for fuck all. Like, it stresses me out. But for this talk, because I really want to make sure that I'm nailing these concepts as I'm working through this brand new talk that I'm giving you, you are the first.
Yes.
I'm going to, thank you. I will be referencing my notes a little bit more than I normally do, so I know that you will forgive me for that. I found this work to be really useful and spoke to me because I would often experience a lot of internal conflict and polarity within myself. A part of me loves non-monogamy, loves the idea of relational freedom, loves the idea of sexual exploration, and another part of me is fucking terrified of it and feels like I'm going to be replaced, or that my partner's going to leave me, or I'm going to feel rejected or abandoned or not desired. And so those parts are in conflict, they're in polarity with each other. And IFS gave me language for that. It gave me a scaffolding for how to understand that just because I'm feeling a thing and it feels very intense in my body and it feels very true, I don't have to let that part talk out of my mouth. Instead of being like, you're eyeing that girl and it's grossing me out and like, fuck you for making me feel bad, I can be like, ooh, a part of me is feeling really activated right now. A part of me is freaking out, and I need to like share some of that with you. And it creates a separation. So instead of being the part that is freaked, I'm the part that is describing the part that is freaked. And that distance has allowed me to have so much more productive conversations in conflict when I am activated, and also in like dirty talk and sexting. So I'm going to give you a little example of what this looks like in an erotic context before we get into the meat of what I'm talking about. So my boyfriend lives in Toronto and I live in Texas. 2,000 some odd miles separate us, and it is hard. We've been long distance for all 3 of the years that we've been together. And we only see each other probably 4 times a year. It's really hard. So we sext a lot. We have FaceTime sex, we text sex message, we send our dirty pictures, videos back and forth, lots and lots of sexting. And I have a very free and forgiving schedule, but I'm also ADHD. I'm always doing 5 things at the same time. And his primary coping strategy for stress is masturbating, which I respect. So he'll text me and he'll already be hard and jerking off and like, hey, you want to get off right now? And I'm like, sir, I'm doing the dishes. I am not there right now. And he, being the giver that he is, being a human that's very invested in my pleasure, which I'm so grateful for, is like, I want to get you off. Let's get off. Let's start with you. Let's get you off right now. I'm like, nope. Hard. Like, I can't feel my genitals right now. So sometimes he'll kind of like shotgun spray a bunch of different things to see which one's gonna hit. Right? And like he's like, how about this? How about this fancy? How about this angle? How about this thing? And while I appreciate a menu, sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed by it, and I feel bad like shooting him down with every suggestion. I'm like, nope, not that. Nope, not like that. Nope, not like that. And so I'm going to read you a little exchange that we had recently that made me cry and then hum as I was crying. Because you can do both. So as he's like giving me all these suggestions, how about this? Or like going down this rabbit hole, and I'm just like, nope, not working. Nope, not working. I said, my brain is telling me that I'm being overly critical, and I don't want to take the wind out of your sails. You're already horny, and we can just take you over the edge, because giving is where I hide. I'm like, let's just focus on you. Don't worry about me. I said, I love that you care about my orgasm. I know you'll give me exactly what I asked for. I just don't know exactly how to articulate what would get me there, and I don't want you to have to keep throwing spaghetti at the wall. And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Thank you for all of that. That's exactly what I wanted. Let's explore and see what does turn you on. And I said, I feel bad for the saying like, no, not like that. No, not like that. And he said, all those ideas that I propose all the time usually turn me on too. So don't feel stressed that like you're not saying yes right away. And he said, get in bed, get comfy, and let your boyfriend take you on a journey. I said, I love you so much. He said, this is exactly what I want. I love exploring and finding the things that you enjoy and don't enjoy. And here's where I got real vulnerable. I said, the part of me that says I'm too much work is screaming right now. Oh, that was edgy to admit out loud, right? I was like, I feel like a high maintenance pain in the ass. And what he said back to me, made me cry. He said, good. Be a high maintenance Barbie girlfriend who makes her boyfriend work to make her come. Sobbing, just ugly crying in my bed, like with my hand on my clit and Susie with the other hand. He said, I want to give you everything. Oh my God. Wait, what? I can be vulnerable and I can tell you when there's parts of me that are screaming, and you, instead of telling me like, no, you're not being high maintenance, no, you're not too much, you're just like, be high maintenance, bitch. Do it, own it. What a concept. So, your parts, you don't have to know this is on the quiz, but like just to kind of give you a little bit of a landscape to the IFS model, he identifies like different parts have different jobs. So there's the protectors and there's the exiles. And the protectors are like the parts that are more forward facing. The exiles are like the little part of you that when you were 8, you got teased or rejected and like kind of isolated itself inside of you into this little corner and it's scared. And the protectors formed around it to kind of keep it safe the way that they thought they knew how. And protectors are 2 categories. There's managers and there's firefighters. Your managers are like the perfectionist, the overfunctioner, the one that's like, if I just control everything around me, everything will be fine. Anyone familiar with that one? Yeah. Okay. The firefighters are the ones that are like, fuck this shit. And they're like, I'm going to drink a lot, do a lot of drugs, avoid, numb, work out excessively, like get lots of plastic surgery. Like, they're the ones that are like, if we just, aim a fire hose at this, we don't have to feel these uncomfortable feelings. Anyone familiar with that particular mindset, right? Yeah, we do that. So the problem is not having parts. All of us have parts, and one of Dick Schwartz's books is called No Bad Parts. None of the parts of you are bad. But when they take the mic, and they are the ones making the decision, not your like higher self that is in your adult brain, that's when things get dicey. So speaking from a part sounds like you always want more than I can give. I guess I'm just not enough. Why do you even want this? Fine, do whatever you want. Anyone familiar with those? Yeah. That's speaking from a part. And what's interesting is what he calls self-like parts, where these parts are so familiar to us that we think it's our truth speaking. We're like, no, this is how I really, really feel. And like, I'm just communicating with you this thing that I feel. So, if it's hard to hear, it's not my problem. But speaking for a part might sound something like, a part of me is scared I'm going to get replaced. There's a younger part of me that needs reassurance before I can feel sexy. I want this, but I also needed to take it slow. That is speaking for you. That is you in your adult brain saying, I have a need that I can feel, and I'm going to identify it and articulate it and share it with my partner in a way that is kind and compassionate and thoughtful. Because when you're speaking from a part, your partner is often going to feel the need to defend, because those parts are kind of, they attack, right? They can be very aggressive. When you're like, you're going to leave me because you think I'm ugly. It's like, now all of a sudden they're in damage control mode. And we live in a society that sort of sells us this fairy tale that someday you're going to meet your perfect person and they're going to love you so much and they're going to make you feel so safe that you are never going to feel anything but happy ever again. Anyone else see that Disney movie? And the problem is, when we externalize our need for safety to our partner, we are expecting them to be our rescuer, our redeemer, our secure attachment figure that we didn't get in childhood. And that's a lot to ask of a person. So instead, what IFS invites us to do is to become that secure attachment figure for ourselves by channeling and putting a lot of time and effort and investment into the self-energy, so that when those younger, scared, somewhat maladaptive parts come up, we can reparent ourselves. We can be the ones to say, oh, I'm feeling really insecure right now. Like, let me offer myself some reassurance primarily. We become our primary caretaker. And then secondarily, we can invite our partner in to also show up for us in those ways. So it's a reorientation of how we move through the world. And I know this is heavy stuff and it's really confronting. And I appreciate you being here in all of this with me. And we're going to go do handouts and put some massage afterwards so you can shake it off into pleasure. Because it turns out emotional intimacy is foreplay. You're welcome. So, in his love of alliteration, he's identified 8 C's and 5 P's of self-energy. I'm not going to expect you to remember all of these, but I just want you to kind of hear them, so even if you remember a couple, you're like, oh yeah. The 8 C's are calm, curious, clear, connected, compassionate, confident, courageous, and creative. Now, if you think about what those energies would bring to you, just close your eyes for a second. And I'm going to say them again, and just imagine how they feel in your body. Even one of them might feel in your body. Calm, curious, clear, connected, compassionate, confident, courageous, creative. And then the 5 P's are patience, perspective, presence, playfulness, persistence. Now, if you can imagine channeling those words, those energies, into how you approach yourself and the challenging parts of yourself that arise, what do you think shifts? How much of a more full, kind, patient human would you be if you were tapping into those energies a lot of the time? It's hard to do it all the time. We're not perfect. But if that was sort of your North Star for how you want to show up for yourself first and how you want to show up for your partner, how much more loving and healthy and adaptive and nurturing relationships would you have, both with romantic partners, family, friends, colleagues, when you don't take things personally because you know that, ooh, that's probably one of their parts coming up. And so when one of their parts activates one of your parts, you go, okay, I felt that. All right, let me give that part a little bit of what it needs so that I can respond to it and to them from that place. Thank you. So when you're speaking to your partner, to your friends, but this is a couples retreat, right? Largely. When you're speaking to your partner, if what you're saying doesn't carry at least a few of those qualities, it's probably one of your protector parts or exiles that's holding the microphone. So just be aware of that. And it is okay. It's, we've all done it. I have spoken from my parts so many times to go back later and be like, hey, I was a little offsides back there. I think one of my parts was holding the microphone. I'm sorry about that. Can I do a do-over? Can I try that again from this place? And that's what repair looks like. And we are always in a state of being connected and repairing and conflict and repair and conflict and repair. Like that's relationships. So a lot of the time when we are externalizing our safety, we end up falling into like three main kind of patterns, or what Dick Schwartz calls projects, which is fix them, fix me, or exit or numb. Have you seen these as coping skills, right? If I'm feeling insecure in my relationship, and Scott really beautifully touched on this with his wild love theory. If I'm feeling insecure in my relationship, my instinct is to be like, you can't have one-on-one chats with our playmates. You can't go on solo dates. You can't do sleepovers. You can't fluid bond. You can't. Or, why do you need to have two girlfriends? Why do you need to have a spouse and a girlfriend or a boyfriend? Like, let's just make sure that our playmates are just playmates and they don't have any kind of emotional investment, because emotional investment is our thing and not their thing, right? Like, we do all these things of like, something about you is bothering me, so we need to fix you so that I don't have to feel uncomfortable. That's a common thing. And then the next kind of version of that, if that doesn't work, or you are a classic overfunctioner people pleaser, well, just fix me. I will try not wanting that thing. I will try not having that boundary. I will try to override my insecurities or fears or requests. And I'll just pretend it's all fine, and I'm sure it'll be fine, right? It'll be fine if I just pretend it's fine. Mind over matter, right? No. So it's really trading authenticity for approval when we are trying to fix ourselves because it's causing conflict in our relationship. It's hiding the parts that we think are unlovable instead of saying, there's a part of me that thinks it's unlovable. I just need to presence that with you. It's a very different energy when you speak for your parts instead of from your parts. And then exiting, replacing, or numbing looks like withdrawing emotionally from the relationship. It looks like investing a lot of your energy in your friendships or your other relationships or work. It sometimes looks like completely leaving a relationship. Oh, we are fundamentally incompatible. Fuck this shit. You're not solving all of my problems and making all my dreams come true. So this relationship was the problem. I gotta go. So those are some of the ways that can show up when we are really like in our protector and exile parts and not in our self energy. So what does this look like in practice? First step is noticing. When you feel something crunchy, feel into that part of your body. Is it in your chest? Is it in your belly? That's typically where it starts for me. Sometimes my throat will feel really constricted. Or sometimes I will suddenly become aware of the fact that I can't feel my body. And my voice gets kind of quiet. And I start staring off into the middle distance. And I'm like, oh, I'm not here right now. Shit. So the first thing is to notice. And the second thing is to name. I'm feeling really disconnected from my body right now. I'm feeling really angry. A part of me is feeling really angry right now. A part of me is feeling really scared right now. A part of me is feeling really insecure right now. Naming that to yourself first, I think, is really valuable because it helps to just have a little bit of internal awareness before you start sharing with your partner. Just that one checkpoint. So notice, name, offer compassion. Can you be in your self energy toward this part that is giving you some grief, right? Because if you're annoyed by the part of you that's coming up, that's not your self energy. Your self doesn't get annoyed. That's another part that's annoyed by that other part. And there can be a whole constellation of them. A lot of people are like, this sounds like multiple personality disorder. It's Walt Whitman said, Do I contradict myself? Yes, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. We all contain multitudes. There is an entire ecosystem inside of us of these parts. And some of them are allies and some of them are polarized against each other. Some of them protect each other sometimes. Some of them don't know the others exist. They think they're the only one. And so just becoming aware of that, and why he calls it family systems, is it is a family inside of you. And if you ever thought about your own family dynamics and who doesn't talk to who and who hates who and who talks behind who's back, like, imagine that happening inside of you all of the time. But then you get to be the capital S self that comes in and offers that compassion and calm and clarity and courage and connectedness to all of those other parts. You become the steward of your internal experience. And from that place, you are going to be an infinitely more loving partner and human. So, does that sound like something you might be curious about doing in your life? Awesome. I love that. Becoming your own secure partner is bringing self-energy to places that were missing it before. And when you do that, the relationships in your life stop carrying an impossible weight. Your partner can never be a perfect person. They are always going to do something that triggers you or that hits a spot, not intending to, just living their lives. So if we constantly need our partners to be the one thing in our life that brings us joy, happiness, and safety, we're setting them up for failure. It's an inside job. The security comes from you. The security comes from knowing I've got me. And that is going to lead to infinitely more positive, incredible experiences in your life and in the world. So I'm going to leave you with that as we are getting ready to go do hand jobs and pussy massage and the Kama Sutra Palace. But I know that this is a lot and it's heavy stuff, so like take a nice deep breath. At least you're going to get to walk in the sunshine as I, piper you guys over there. I have little handouts here with a QR code that has some great free stuff. I am a coach. I have room in my coaching roster. I would love to work with you if you're like, oh, this seems like something that would be really beneficial to me or me and my partner. That sounds awesome. Let's do that. And my last little plug is I run a women's intensive called Activating Your Cosmic Pussy. It is about sex magic, sexual empowerment, owning your desires, clearly sharing your boundaries, plant medicine, masturbation, pussy love, all of the awesomeness. It starts in February and it's open for enrollment now. So if you're curious about that, please talk to me. Thank you so much.